Hi everyone, it's Tanya Kraus here, and you're joining me for an episode of Let's Talk Horses. What I wanted to talk today about was first impressions. So basically, when you're meeting a horse for the first time, or generally, this is probably going to be after you've brought that horse home. So we're talking about basically the scenario where you've purchased a horse and you might have gone to do the for sale, purchase inspection, so to speak. So you've gone, you've met the horse, you've ridden the horse, that sort of thing. That's a unique situation in that you're probably going to arrive at a purchase inspection. The owner is probably going to do, lunge the horse, show you that he picks up his feet, all of those sorts of things, show you that it can be caught and bridled and saddled and jumped on and all those sorts of things. And then they are going to let you do all of those things typically, so you can feel the horse and decide whether you want to buy it. So often it's not the first time that you meet a horse that I'm talking about here, because that is, you are going to take the horse through its paces, so to speak, to see if you actually want to buy it. But beyond that, once the horse actually gets delivered to your home, there's some elements involved there that I believe are going to set you up for a good relationship. And there's some elements that, if done poorly, can actually set you up for I know a few circumstances where it's set you up to have pretty bad, repercussions and ongoing repercussions. So let's talk about it. So the first thing is that what we need to understand is, when you first get the horse home, and I hear this a lot, you have to understand that when you first get the horse home, that it's not necessarily the horse that you have seen at the purchase inspection, in that it's the same physical horse, but they may be exhibiting different behaviours than what you saw at the purchase inspection. And you also have to realise that it might not necessarily be the true horse that you're seeing in the first few days or weeks at your home. And this works on both ends of the scale. So let's say you get the horse home and he's behaving badly in comparison to the way that you saw it at the purchase inspection. Oftentimes what we'll immediately jump to in the horse industry, and unfortunately it does happen in the horse industry, is that the horse was drugged, or the horse, had something like that happen to it, that it was worked down. And yes, those things absolutely do happen. So it needs to be on your radar. But let's say that we're operating outside a dishonest seller. Let's just say the horse is exhibiting some, undesirable behavior, and you sort of go, oh my God, the horse didn't behave like this at the purchase inspection. What's gone wrong? Well, nothing's gone wrong. We have to understand that the horse has been removed from everything it knows. Its owner's no longer there. There's no familiar things. So his herd's not there, his owner's not there, his paddock's not there. So environmentally different, socially different, and owner familiarity different. So you're basically bringing a horse, and sometimes you might bring their rugs and things like that with you, but basically he's got everything down to new rugs, new feed bucket, new home, new everything. So it's sort of like you getting on a plane right now with no luggage and getting off in Japan and walking into a new property, a new apartment with all new things in the new apartment, plus a new partner that you've never met before. And they're just like, hey, welcome home. You might start to display some undesirable behavior because you're not familiar with your environment and you're feeling uncomfortable and stressed. So that is number one that we have to be aware of, that it's going to take time for the horse to assimilate to the new environment. It can happen on both ends of the scale. A horse can be so out of its element that it can go internal. So you might get a horse home and it might be acting really quiet and really lethargic, and you might be able to get away with a lot of things in the first week or two, and then all of a sudden the horse starts to come out of that shell because he was overwhelmed. He was just sort of, you know, letting you do whatever you wanted. And then after he starts to, you know, acclimatize to his new environment, he starts to have a conversation and say, actually, I don't want to do that. I don't like this. I don't like this. So whether the horse is bad or whether it's, you know, oh, look how quiet he is, that's not necessarily the true horse that you are going to have in a month or 2 months or 3 months. It's really important here to note that as soon as you start feeding it different types of feeds as well, that there's potentially going to be an issue in that regard as well. So then you've got the physical discomfort of moving. So depending on how far away the horse was when you purchased it, you may have had to have the horse transported to its new location. And depending on the length of that trip, there is a physical discomfort that comes from transport, which isn't, you know, especially a longer transport, which isn't, you know, necessarily going to be overcome straight away. And even if it was a relatively short trip, but the horse isn't used to being transported, it still can be quite overwhelming, just physically demanding on the horse's body. So there might be some sore spots that, again, weren't noticeable at the purchase inspection. So what you might notice as you start to work around this new horse is that they may start to adopt some defensive or protective mechanisms. And it's not necessarily the true horse. So I have got a little horse called Angel. And she was a little bit mistreated and had quite traumatic training experiences prior to me getting her. It's part of the reason why I did get her. And when I first met her at an alternate location. And I was able to do some round pen work with her. And what I loved about doing round pen work with her, and I didn't ask her to move or anything like that, it sort of gave her space and it gave me space, and it allowed me to have conversations with her about more what I was going to bring to the table as opposed to what I could get her to do. So I was able to communicate with her and behave in a way that I knew I was going to behave when I got home and things like that. So I'm just going to take a second here. When I know of several people that have been able to spend time with their horse before they bring it home. So I know of a lady that, you know, went and had a vacation a couple of weeks in the area that the horse was and was able to go and visit and work with the horse every day. That is such a great opportunity and a great idea if you can do it, because then when the horse gets home to your place, at least he goes, oh, I know you. You're that lady or man who's been coming to see me. I know of people that have done that with foals. So, you know, they purchase a foal when it's 4 weeks old, it's still on its mother, and they go and visit the foal on a regular basis until it's ready to be weaned. So at the same thing, you're familiar with the foal. So if you can do that, that's a really great opportunity. If you've got a horse that starts displaying defensive or protective mechanisms, what we need to do is set boundaries around that. Like, obviously I'm not going to allow the horse to just kick at me and then I go, oh, well, I know that you're overwhelmed, so I'm going to let that happen. But I'm also not going to take it personally, and I'm not going to treat the horse as if that's the true horse. You know, I think everybody has the ability to become angry at times or snap at times, humans, dogs, cats, horses, whatever. So I'm going to say, you know, maybe ask the horse to move his hips away from me or something like that. But I'm not going to enter into a big argument about the defensive mechanism. I'm just going to make sure that I'm safe and the horse is safe. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Obviously, if it continues happening on a regular basis, then I might have to have a conversation about it. But initially, I'm going to treat it like a one-off, and I'm going to kind of, like I say, get myself safe, get the horse safe, but I'm going to ignore it. I'm not going to go to town about that situation. What I need to do is set boundaries, but have small expectations or small demands. So I want to keep it really basic for the first, and again, it's guided by the horse's body language. If you're buying a 20-year-old horse that has, been there, done that with Pony Club and been ridden by lots of different people and been dragged around and things like that, it's probably going to be less overwhelmed than a, brand new horse that's only ever had one owner. You have to just be really conscious of what the situation is and the individual circumstances of each individual horse. So when I say set boundaries and have small demands, it's going to be things around the basics. This is how I'm going to put your halter on, and I'm going to set the stage straight away. I'm not going to put on the halter one way for the first 2 weeks and then say, oh, you've settled in now I actually want you to do it like this. I'm going to invest the time into saying to the horse, this is how we put the halter on, and this is how I'm going to do it every day, every time, any place, anywhere. But I'm going to make it small stuff, the basic stuff. I'm not going to say, get on the horse and say, oh, okay, I bought you and you're a Grand Prix horse, so I'm going to go out and do canter pirouettes and flying changes on you on day one. What I'm going to do is say to the horse, hey, this is how I want to put the halter on, this is how I want to lead you, this is how I'm going to feed you, this is how I'm going to do these kinds of stuff. So before I get into that, the other thing that I want to make sure that I do with the horse, and we're going to do it anyway, but I just want to have it on your radar in regards to feeding and watering. So again, I don't want to get a horse off a trailer or a transport and immediately start to try and do work with it or this or that. I want to put him in a yard, hopefully in view of other horses, or optimally in view of other horses, so he understands, okay, there's other horses around, I'm not alone. And I also want to give him not a bucket of hard feed or a handful of licorice or anything like that. I want to give him the basics. I want to make sure he's got water, and I want to make sure he's got some hay, so he doesn't land and think, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, oh my God, I need to find food and water. We have to understand that that's a survival mechanism for a horse. So a horse's instinct when he's overwhelmed is to graze, is to put his head down and graze. So I want to facilitate that as soon as possible. Once I've done that and allowed him to maybe settle in, let's say, he settles in for an hour or so and I do want to get my hands on him because I've got this new horse, then I'm going to work on what I call my citizenship work. How we put the halter on, how we lead, how we pick up your feet, how we, put your rug on if you're used to being rugged. So I want to take things that I know the horse has been done with at his previous home. Again, it's circumstantial depending on whether I've bought a fully trained horse and a ridden horse and all of that, or whether it's just a young horse that has never had a halter on before. I want to try and do familiar things, but I'm also going to set the boundaries and say, as I said, this is how I put the halter on. This is how I want you to lead. This is how, but very gently boundaries, very quiet, gentle, easy stuff. So you can open that conversation. It's sort of like when you're first meeting someone for the first time and you're having a conversation, you're not going to start talking, quantum physics on day one, unless you're a physicist. You're going to talk about, the weather and where you are and the property. We went to a wedding the other night and we talked about what was happening in the local community. We talked about the common interests that we were there for, the people getting married, etc., etc. So that's the sort of thing that you want to do. You want to think of it like a first date with your horse, and then a second date, and then a third date. That's how you set good relationships. That's how you set good expectations of each other. So if you don't put any untoward demands on the horse, then the horse starts to feel confident and comfortable around you, because all you've asked him to do so far is, get the halter on and lead and maybe get a rug on and pick up his feet and all of those sorts of things, all of those citizenship things, and you've provided him food and you've provided him water. So he's already making a first impression in his mind. He's thinking, I feel safe, I've got food, I've got water, my basic needs are covered, I can see another horse, and this person is deliberate and clear in the way they want me to do things, and but they're only presenting me with really simple things to do at the moment. Once I start to set those, I would do citizenship things for maybe 2 or 3 days. I would just let them settle in, do really basic general conversation stuff. Then I would start with any horse, even like I say, even if it's a Grand Prix horse, I would start with the foundation work first. Purely because the foundation elements give me a conversation. It's like having prompt cards. It's like saying, okay, can you bend? Okay, can you back up? Okay, can you do a hindquarter yield? Okay, can you, it gives me things to talk about, but they're really simple, basic things. And so that gives me the ability to assess how the horse does things. Is he willing? Is he soft? Is he whatever? And it gives me things to talk about that are requirements, but again, not terribly difficult requirements. And so I might do foundations for the first 2 weeks, and then I might add in something a little bit more challenging, and slowly but surely I'm going to build the relationship to the point where I hold my own space. From day one, I set the boundaries, but they're really basic. And then we increase the degree of difficulty, so to speak. We increase the expectations over time, and that's what keeps our horse confident and willing and engaged in the process. It's, why in school, a lot of schools have that first day of school where I remember when I was in the first day of high school, we were allowed to do the first day of high school where all of the other grades, so I grew up in Queensland, my first year of high school was year 8. In some states and countries it's different grade, but my first year was year 8. So all of the year 8 kids were allowed to go to, required to go to school on the Monday, but there were no other grades there. There was no year 9, 10, 11 or 12. And our high school was separate to the primary school kids. So it was only grade 8. So it was all of our friends that we were familiar with, and new people as well, but all of us were the same age. And we were also able to go and explore the school without worrying about, the year 11 kids and the year 12 kids and what was going on here. And it's just a way to introduce the kids to the school without being completely overwhelmed. So it's kind of like the same thing with your horse. You want to make sure that you're asking them really simple things in order to develop a relationship and develop the conversations, and then we increase the challenges over time. So I hope that gives you some really good ideas on how to introduce your horse and create some really good first impressions when you're starting a new partnership. Thanks for joining me for Let's Talk Horses, and I'll see you on the next episode.